jewelry making friends. My name is Joey Balistreri. Welcome to my channel. I'm so glad that you're here. I am kind of starting this video by showing you a little bit of my design process when I start a piece, and this piece is using the things from the March dollar bead box and dollar bead bag. So I recently did an unboxing, and I can link that video below if you did not see it, just so that you can see what is in this month's box if you have not gotten yours yet. And if it's a subscription that you don't receive, I highly recommend it. It's one of my boxes that I get and love and share with you. So I'll link my unboxing and all of that below. But I am going to start by opening my sketchbook because I don't know, I know the camera plays a little bit with the light when I put the book under, but I started sketching based on this connector that I had in my own stash. And I have made my notes, and this kind of helps me work out where I'm going with the piece, especially when there's going to be a lot of components. And so I titled this one a multi-strand necklace because it's going to be mixed media, mixed strands. It's going to go from 2 strands to 4 strands up to chain and really be a fun, very, very involved piece. So that's kind of where I'm going. And I had mentioned in my unboxing video the bookmarker cords that I made, and using those Czech glass tulip beads, because we received in this month's box, dollar bead box, we received 4 of these really satiny Czech glass tulips that are just like the ones that I used for this project. So I can also link my book jewelry video below this one if you didn't see it and you're interested, because we actually did get some more of those tulips in a different color in this box. So I thought I would just start the video by showing you a little bit of how I begin to do a piece like this. So the first thing that I did is I went into my own stash. I do not remember where I got this connector, but I wanted to use it. So I started with this piece, and then I decided on how I wanted to connect things to it, and then I began the process of checking the holes and the sizes and how things stack. So I have tested, let me see, this is a 7-strand beading wire in this one. This is a different beading wire that I had left over from a project. So I was just doing tests to see if the holes fit with 1 strand, 2 strand, what kind of loops I can get, how things would hang with small jump rings. I tried large ones. And then will 4 strands go through these little melon beads that I have. Now, we did get some melon beads in this month's box, and they are beautiful. They're white, and I may even switch to those, but I was kind of wanting to pull in a little bit more pink because of these Czech glass beads that we got that kind of have a dark pink and purple in them. And so I'm this is just the beginning. And then I want to do a drop from this component. So I was just playing to see what gauge of wire I could get through these crescent beads that came in the box, and if the 3 or 4 millimeter fire polish actually fit if I were to wire them. So this was kind of the beginning of my design. I was sketching and then testing different stringing material. And so I have settled pretty much on what I'm going to do. As you start working, it's subject to change. Any of you jewelry makers with any experience at all know how true that is. We start out doing one thing and sometimes a completely different thing. But this is going to be a sort of an unusual version of a Y necklace, because I do want to do 4 strands of beaded material here, and then transition into chain, and then I'm going to pull some of that chain down here and create a drop with this tulip. So from my own stash, I did pull some 18 karat gold plated chain that I just kind of like the color with this component and the scale of it. You know, I didn't want to do a really chunky chain with something that's rather petite. So I kind of look at that. And then I have some things waiting in the wings. I pulled out some gold spacers that have a really large hole. So if I find that once I have done my beading that I need to change this bead, I have like a plan B. And so I'm also going to be using some of this satin gold 7-strand beading wire. That was what I was testing here to see if I actually can create this. And so I will get everything cut apart and sort of laid out, and I will come back and show you how I'm going to start stringing the top part of this component. But I just wanted to give you a little idea of my design process. Everybody does things their own way, but maybe it will help some of you when you want to get started on a piece that might be a little bit involved, and not to feel overwhelmed and like pick a place to start. So I hope that helps a little bit. And so I'm going to pause here and start my project, and I'll be back to show you what I'm doing. So I worked out some of the problems with this design, but honestly, I am in love with it so far. It is stunning. Can you see how beautiful it is to stack those crescent beads? And I made use of the seed beads that came in the box, but then I added in some seed beads from my own stash. So I'm using these Toho galvanized gold seed beads that are a size, are these an 8? Yes, these are a size 8. And so that's what you see as kind of the little gold spacer on either side of the 4mm Czech glass beads that came in the box. And then I'm also using, in between the 12-0 seed beads that came in the box, I'm using these little 11-0 metallic gold seed beads just as spacers, you know, so don't underestimate the power of a seed bead. They make such beautiful spacers. And so I've come up with the little pattern here, and I did one side of the necklace, and then I'll show you, I'll do the other side with you. But there were some challenges where you have 4 strands that you're beading that you want to come into one strand. Definitely some challenges, but I worked out a solution, and really the secret is to have a bead here, a transition bead that has a large enough hole that you don't have to struggle. So I ended up shifting my design a little bit because these are just from my stash, and of course I picked up one that has a blocked hole so you can't see. That is Murphy's Law. But these have a really large hole, and then I just stacked 3 of them together, and it gave me exactly what I needed. And you really can't see because it's hidden inside, but I used my magical crimping pliers, and I crimped my 4 strands before I stacked these beads on, and it just worked out beautifully. So there, well, you can sort of see it hides right inside this large hole. And then I had the issue of, now I have 4 strands, which my Czech glass melon bead went on, but I had the issue of I can't loop it back because 5 strands is not going to fit through anything, not a crimp tube, not this bead. So the way that I worked that out is to use a clamshell connector, and if you can see, I'll try to show you what I did. The hole is large enough in the back for the 4 strands to go in, and I'll show you how this accommodated everything. But I am thrilled with the way it turned out. And so when once I have the other side done, I realize that I have an awful lot competing with your attention on my bead mat, but when we get to that, you'll see how lovely it's going to be. But I'm going to repeat this for the other side, and with jump rings attach it to this connector bar. And so I am really, really happy with the way that it looks. And I will say, full disclosure, this is a little bit challenging. You are managing an awful lot to create this component for one side of your necklace, but just be patient. You know, if you're a person that struggles with crimping, I don't know, this might be, although there's only 2 crimps in it, But that might be, I'm just trying to give you a little heads up if you love this design and you would like to make it along with me. That is a little bit of a challenge, but as you can see, I did it, so it's definitely doable. So the way that I started actually is to cut 4 identical lengths of that 7-strand beading wire that I showed you. It's the Bead-A-Lon one. And I cut 4 that are exactly alike, and 2 of them are here on this side, and then these 2 are going to make up the other side. So the way I began is by finding the ends, matching the ends up. And that's really helpful if you do a good job at this, matching the ends up like that. It will make your stringing, because this is the beginning of your stringing, it will make it much easier. And then this is counterintuitive, because what you want to think you want to do in this 2-hole crescent bead is put 1 strand in each hole. But I'm going to put both ends of this strand in one of the holes. And it does go. And it's tight. I mean, and it's not tight. I mean, you can see that I'm sliding it. I mean, you can see that I'm sliding it. It's a little bit snug as you get down where you're going to make a loop. So what I tried to do is just keep my wires side by side, keep them parallel to each other, not twisted inside that hole. And you'll see that as the loop starts to take up space in the hole, that it gets a little bit snug as you go down, and that's okay. And you know, the first one you don't have to worry about your sizing, but now I do want to match that loop to the one that I've already done. And that looks pretty good to me. Now, I did not feel the need to crimp or do anything because, as I said, once I have pulled this down, it is quite snug. And so there's my magical crimping plier. And so what you can do is just use your pliers to help you to make sure that that loop is facing forward and that it's good. And now we're going to do the exact same thing for the other hole. So just to match up those 2 ends, and like I said, if you do a good job at this, you'll see when you start stringing those seed beads, you'll see that that bit becomes a lot easier. So let me do that exact same thing, put both strands in the second hole of this crescent bead, and just keep them parallel and go ahead and pull that through. And so when you're pulling it through, it's not snug, but it does get snug as your loop gets down toward the bottom of the crescent bead. And this might seem, when I was doing it, I thought, okay, they're going to say this is really strange, but what I envisioned was for this to attach to this bar seamlessly. I didn't want to have like I wanted it to just be all one piece, and I wanted it to be almost not noticeable where these attach to this connector bar. You know, I didn't want to see like a lot of hardware, and I wanted something almost disappearing and unobtrusive. And so this just worked for me, and I really like it, and I feel like it's going to be secure. You know, it's a little bit challenging for sure, because it's a little bit different than the way I would even normally do it. But so that's what I have. And now I'm just going to repeat this pattern that I did over here. And so I can just draw these 2 together. So you have 4 wires, but you're going to kind of treat them at first as if you're only dealing with 2, because you hold these 2 together and take another crescent bead, and you want to stack them on top of each other. So make sure that you're putting it, in the left hole. There is it's a crescent bead, so you have one side has a flat back, and I'm going to get on this side and match up these 2 and put them through this hole. And I'm going to stack 3 of them. I'm repeating this pattern right here. So I stacked 3, and then I separated them again and put the 3mm Czech glass beads, and then stacked another 3, and then I started my stringing pattern. So I am just repeating that. And so this part is really easy. They slide right down on top of each other, and this part is just simple stringing, and it's really enjoyable because there's a gratification to this as you're doing this. It starts to you know, you start out with just bare wire that seems to be all over the place, and then as you get some beads on, it really starts to take shape, and it's exciting, like, to see your design just unfold right before your eyes. So I'm having a lot of fun with this design because I've never done this before, and as you saw at the beginning of my video, when I started to sketch and design, I had to get out some stringing material and some wire and just test to see if what I was thinking would actually work. You know, would the wires go through would 4 of them go through, and then also would, for my second part, would my wire go through these crescent beads? So I tested everything so that I didn't waste my time stringing things and then it not working. So if you want to make this, if you like this and you decide that you would like to make this, I can give you a heads up of the challenges, and I've kind of worked out the bugs, so you won't have to. That's the nice thing about borrowing someone else's design, right? So I'm going to do the same thing, stack 3 more of these crescent beads, just drawing those 2 wires together, get those in. And 1 more. And like I said, do not underestimate the power of seed beads. Sometimes I think that a jewelry maker who is not a bead weaver thinks that, you know, seed beads are just for bead weaving, but they make fabulous spacers. And when you want a little bit of a gold presence, you can accomplish that with a galvanized seed bead. What do I have here? This is Murphy's Law. When you are videotaping, you will inevitably pick up a bead that has a blocked hole or something. But now, like, you'll see that I'm using these galvanized seed beads in this design as spacers in my bead pattern, and it looks like so much more than a seed bead once it's strung on. What have I got here? There we go. You just line up these wires so they slide. There we go. I think this crescent bead that I picked up does have a little bit of something going on with the hole, but I got it. Okay, so that bit is done. It matches the other side nicely. And now this is where, as I said, a little 8/0 galvanized seed bead. It just looks like so much more than a seed bead in a stringing pattern like this, and it keeps everything dainty. I mean, I'm loving this, and of course, I've never made this before, but what I'm loving about it is that it's a statement necklace without being chunky and heavy and huge. And so, I mean, look at that. Isn't that beautiful? And it really is just an 8/0 galvanized gold seed bead, and it gives you that gold metal presence, and I just love it. And it kind of frames these Czech glass beads. I like to say it plays nicely with them. So this is what I did on the other side, and then from here we will separate the wires and create these little sections. So I don't know if you can see what I've done, but all 4 of the wires have 10 seed beads, and then a little 11/0 gold seed bead, and then another 10 of the 12/0 seed beads that came in our box. And then I went back to the same bead station with the 8/0 galvanized and the 4mm Czech glass, and then another 8/0 seed bead, and made that station. And then I separated the wires again, and for my eye, I like the odd numbers, so I decided to do 3 sections and stop there. I thought that was really pretty. So I'll show you a little bit of what I did, and then I'm going to spare you the boredom. It's like watching paint dry to watch someone string seed beads. But this is literally what I did. I counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and just let those fall down. And then I picked up one of the gold metallic 11/0s and just let that fall down, and then another 10. Now, if you want to be safe, do as I say, not as I do. If you want to be safe, you might want to put a bead bug on the strand that you have strung. You can definitely do that. I did not do that. I'm holding it in my hand, and so I didn't do that. But that might be the smart thing to do, because you don't want to have to restring them. So I'm going to repeat that. Just 1, 2, 3, 10, and one of these little gold seed beads. And you do kind of need them to, you do need it to be right, because when we draw these together, when we draw them together, you do need it to be right. And it looks like I have something going on here, because my gold beads are not lining up. Let's see, did I not? Okay, I didn't have it pushed down far enough. Let me just check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I only have 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I have 11 on this side. That's just typical because the camera's rolling. But I caught it, and I really do need this to match the other side. Okay, so it looks like that. And another 10 of the 12 O's on each strand. Let's see if I can count to 10 this time. And then just check, make sure everything is lining up. And now I'm just going to pick up one of those 8O galvanized on both strands now, and one of these 4mm Czech glass, another 8O, and just pull that down. And so that first little section is done. And I'm going to repeat that on these 2 strands, and then do it 2 more times on each strand, and then I will meet you back and show you how I finished off this final bit. So I have strung my second side to match the first side, and here's where, just like if you were making a bracelet, you want to lay this down and make sure before you crimp that your spacing is right. And in this case, since we have 2 wires coming this way and 2 coming this way, I don't know, let me see if I can pick this up to the camera, if you can see that they're not twisted. I've kept them parallel to each other, and I have really as good as I can get spacing. And so now we're going to draw all 4 of these together, and here's where I was telling you that I feel like I tried so many different beads, and although the 4 strands do go through a Czech glass melon bead, it didn't lay nicely. It was too cramped, and it just didn't flow nicely. So a larger hole bead will really solve that problem for you. So I'm just going to put all 4 strands through this gold donut sort of shaped spacer bead. They have a really nice hole, and these are just from my stash. I do not know where I got them, but so go into your own stash. I was thinking as I was stringing that ceramic beads notoriously have larger holes, so even a ceramic bead here could solve this problem. But that is all I did, and that way you don't have to worry so much about the way that looks, because you have such a large hole that it just kind of makes this lay flat and transition right into the single strand. So here's where I did the first crimp. And so I am using a number 2 crimp tube, and I will tell you that some of the crimp tubes, you may want to dump out a few. It depends on the metal. These are gold filled from, I think these are from Bead, but they're number 2. And I found that I would have one that had a hole that was a little bit smaller and made the 4 wires going in a little bit snug. And then I switched to another one, and you'll see sometimes there's even, I don't know if this one has it, but I pulled out one that had like a little burr on it. And so, they're just, not all crimp tubes are created equally. It's a really tiny little tube. So this one is going pretty well. And so in a large hole bead, a crimp tube like this is going to go right down inside the bead for sure. But all I want to do is get it down to right at the top of this little stack of spacer beads. And then I want to lay this flat again. I don't want to crimp it with it not all in the right position. And so I have just slid my crimp tube right down to the top of those beads. And now that I have it on, I want to organize my wires again. So if you remember when I showed you how I had laid it on the mat, it was nice and flat, and then they got out of position again when I was sliding the crimp tube on. So before I crimp, I just want to make sure everything is laying properly. And it looks great. And you know, normally I would say you don't want rigidity, but this is a small component of a necklace that's going to lay literally on the front of your body, and so it can be straight. Like, this doesn't really need to have a ton of flexibility, although I think it will because of the 4 strands, but I'm just like making sure that everything is where I want it to be. Now I'm going to use my magical crimper, and this tool is fabulous for turning these little tubes into a really tiny bead, and it is very tiny. So you'll see that once I crimp, these 3 beads will still slide right over it, but that's where I'm going to come in with this beautiful Czech glass melon bead. So those large hole beads hide the crimp tube and they keep these wires in place, and in the end it works really great, but it is a little unusual from the way that we would normally string and crimp for sure. But you know, I don't like rules because rules keep you from coming up with something fabulous sometimes. So if you haven't ever used the magical crimping plier, and again, before I press down, I'm just checking everything, all the placement, just to make sure that nothing is twisted and everything is laying side by side. And so there's one little well in the magical crimping plier, and I'm just making sure that my tube is not only in the right position on the wire, but right in the middle of that plier. And then I'm going to close it all the way. And when you remove it, you'll see that you have pinched the 4 corners. And then I'm just going to turn it sideways in that tool, completely sideways, and close it down again. And now just get a hold of my work. You can actually turn your work or the plier, whatever's easier for you, and it always depends on the project, and just go around and around and around until that tube is a little gold bead. And it looks like that. And as I said, see, these go right over the top, but see how perfect that little bead is. So now I'm going to draw all 4 of these together and put on one of my Czech glass melon beads. And let's see, yes, just slide it right down. And it is a little bit, when all those wires are drawn together in the crimp tube, it does get a little bit tight and they're twisted a little bit. So you can even, when something is tight, you really don't want to force Czech glass because you can actually break it. So you can try a twisting, you can try repositioning the wires so that there's like that sweet spot in the, this one is not going down. Let me try another one. I also have a little bead reamer, which sometimes when a hole on a bead is just a little bit too snug, I can clear the hole just a little bit without doing any damage to the bead, and I may have to do that. I mean, I got it on the other side, so I know I can get it on this side. Yeah, I think what I'll do, if you've been on my channel before, you know that I have this little set of tools. It's a couple of sizes of these bead reamers and a couple of files for filing the ends. So like a lot of times I'll start with this really skinny one to just clear the hole, and it's like a little file, and just clear the hole. And it just, you know, sometimes that little teeny bit of extra space makes all the difference in not having to force something Then I'll move up to the next size. I have a battery operated bead reamer that you really need to like ream the beads underwater, but this is almost just like a little file, and let's see if that does it. A lot of times that is all it takes to make things. Oh, there's thunder. Let's see how we did. The next up, there we go. Got it that time. They were just a little bit twisted and making it a little bit thick right there. So that's what we have. It matches the other side. And so now I'm going to move to my clamshell cover and put all of the wires through the hole in the back of the clamshell and bring that right down to my bead. And now I need another crimp tube, and this time I'm just going to flat crimp right inside. Now I felt like when I flat crimped, I felt like it was really nice and secure. But when you flat crimp, if you don't feel that your crimp is secure, you can always put a drop of glue in there, like, you know, GS Hypo Cement, although I'd probably use E6000. But on the other side of my necklace, I did not feel that it was necessary. But if you don't feel it's secure, you can totally do that. There's no rule against it. And then I'm just going to, doesn't matter the position of the clamshell yet, but I'm just going to, again, before I do this final crimp, I just want to make sure, just like we do if we're doing a bracelet or anything else, just make sure that everything is where you want it. And I'm using my bent chain nose pliers because I just feel like I can get in there better. And I am just going to grab it and flatten it. It's just a flat crimp, and just make sure that I have it closed really, or pinched really well. Just, it really looks like I got it good, but I'm going to go in another direction as well. And I am not using cheap crimp tubes. I'm using the gold filled ones, and I can give that a tug. It is not going anywhere. So I am very happy with that. It looks really good. Okay, now we can lose all these wires. So I'm just going to cut them just a teeny bit, like a millimeter above the crimp tube. I just want it all to hide inside the clamshell. Get my cutters in there. Cut those away. And before I close the clamshell, just kind of want to make sure it's facing forward. Start it with my fingers and just close it all the way. Very pretty. So now I have both sides of my necklace done, and I'm ready for my connection, my connector bar. And for that, I'm going to use some very small jump rings, 2 for each side. I am going to use these really, I believe these are 4mm jump rings. And I'm going to put one on each one of those little loops that were created with the bead stringing material. And just add this on. Let me move some of these tools. I'm going to put one jump ring on this outer section of this, and then I am going to add one of those little loops. Okay, just make sure it's closed really well. And then my second jump ring, I don't know how well you can see this connector, but I'm going to do it on this side so that it won't slide around. I'm going to connect it right there. And that gives me like a nice contemporary bar, like a line across the focal of the necklace. So get my jump ring on that section of the connector, and get that little loop that we created in there. Get a hold of everything close it really well. Let's see what we have. Oh, that's beautiful. Look how pretty and seamless that little connection is. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. This is beautiful. Look at that. I love it. So now I am going to add my chain to the back, and I just have this whole length here. Actually, it's 2 lengths. I've had this in my stash for a really long time. Let me just pull out of the camera for one moment. I'm going to cut this in half, so it is helpful to have a little scrap piece of wire to find the middle of a length of chains. That's my link right there that gets cut. And now I'm going to use 2 more of those really small jump rings, same ones. And attach the chain. So this part, like the stringing part, is really the most difficult, the stringing and the crimping on this piece. And this part is really kind of your finishing touches. And then the last thing I'm going to do is make the drop for this. I guess it's not really a Y, it's an unusual like mixture of a Y necklace and a bar necklace, I think. So far, I am loving it. Just attach my chain. So pretty. I love gold and purple. It is gorgeous. And you know, I wasn't exactly sure what my bead pattern was going to be like when I started this. So, oops, I need to close this a little tiny bit more. So I did have the Druck beads that were in this month's box and the other fire polish 4mm beads that were in like that opaque purple, and I ended up not using them. I started to string and I was just really happy with the look that I had. So, you know, that happens when you get so many beautiful beads in a box that all coordinate. You know, you can't use everything in a single piece. I guess you could, but I wanted it to be really elegant and not be too busy. Oh wow, I love that. I love it. Okay, so now I just need to move this extra chain. Now I just need to create my drop, and I left these beads out here because I'm not exactly sure what that design is going to look like, except that I do want to do another stack of these crescent beads. So I think I'm definitely going to use another 6 of those and these fire polish in between like I did there, and probably these little galvanized 8/0 seed beads just to make fabulous spacers. And then at the very end, I am going to put this tulip on this another piece of chain, but I need to make another little section there. So let me get some, probably 20 gauge wire will fit through these. Let me get the wire and create a little component, and I'll be back. The 20 gauge wire really did fit through those little crescent beads, and I'll tell you, this is one of the things that happens when you're creating. I have deviated from my sketch because I wanted to duplicate the component here for a drop from, let me pull this so you can see, from a drop, to create a drop from my bar. But when I was stringing it on and playing with it, I realized that it looks really beautiful hanging horizontally from the bar with the drop hanging from that. So I'm going to give that an attempt, and I'm not sure, this is again a design that I've never done. I'm not sure what's going to happen here. So I took 2 pieces of 20 gauge wire and made simple loops on the end, and then it's the same exact thing that I was doing here with the bead stringing material, where I just threaded on these crescent beads, just a little stack of 3, and then let me get my finger out of the way, and just played with my beads that I already have in the rest of my piece and came up with this little pattern. And I made this little drop with exactly the same elements, trying to sort of, you know, coordinate this drop with the intersection in the next necklace. And so I'm not sure what's going to happen with this, because what I'm going to attempt is to attach the top loop to my horizontal bar and just let this one hang out and do its thing. So I'm going to give that a go. Now I used my one-step looper to make these loops, and I really, especially on a focal like this, I really love the uniformity that I get from that, and it also saves my hands. It's a little challenging when you have 2 wires in the way to deal with, but it is wire, and so if it bends a little bit in making the simple loop, it's no problem. You can always straighten it out after you've gotten your loops in place. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to slip that top wire into this one-step looper, and see, as you can see, the other wire is a little bit in the way, and it's also not exactly where it needs to be on the tool, because I have both wires in there, but I'm going to fix that. Just tidy up that loop, and can always get another pair of pliers in there. Yeah, it's pretty good. And maybe this bottom one is going to be a little easier since I have that wire out of the way. And turn this loop. And just get that in there. And I'm just going to take a hold of these with my pliers and just align everything, and even hand sculpt a little bit. And like I said, I'm just not sure, since I've completely deviated from what I was planning to do. I'm not sure what's going to happen with that bottom loop, but let's give it a go. I also, while I was reorganizing myself, when I paused the camera, I got out a magnetic clasp for the back of my necklace, and it's so funny because the jump rings that are ready made, see how they grab onto the magnet? So I will not use these jump rings to attach it, because they would always be attached to the chain and then grabbing the side of the magnet. And so the jump rings that I make with the Bead-A-Lon wire that has the anti-tarnish coating, they don't grab the magnet. So I made a couple of little jump rings to attach my clasp, but I will use these to attach this part here. And we'll see how it looks. You know, it's kind of design on the fly, because as I was creating this component on wire, duplicating what I had done here on the bead stringing material, I was just looking at it and I just thought, wow, I really like it kind of horizontal rather than vertical. So we're going to try it and see. You know, that's the fun thing about making jewelry and a design like this is really just a jump ring attachment. So if it's not doing what I need it to do, I just disconnect it and, you know, try another option. I hope you can see what I'm doing. I find it's a little bit easier for connecting some things to just leave it flat on my mat. It's like having an extra hand. Let's see if that's even the right size jump ring. Oh, I really like that. I actually don't think that I even mind these loops, but that could be another connection point if I did want to add something there. I really like that, and it hangs really beautifully. Oh my goodness, I discovered this completely by accident. As I said, that is not what I intended to do. And so I had already made this little component because I wanted to hammer this, and I generally don't hammer while the camera is going. So I just made a spiral and hammered it flat on a piece of that same 20 gauge wire and did the stack, pretty much doing the same elements that I have been using throughout. And I wire wrapped the loop, and I did that so that I could make it so that my tulip bead is not spinning around. I want it to be facing forward and facing forward on my spiral. And I'm just going to create almost like a Y necklace design here, just adding a little chain between this component and the tulip component. So my necklace is, as I am prone to do, has gotten a little bit long, and it's hard to get everything on camera. And so this is just really a matter of taste. There's no rhyme or reason. Just gonna make my best judgment here and just take about that much just to create like a little kind of Y necklace look. It's unusual, isn't it? It's like a bar necklace going into a Y necklace, a multi-strand necklace. It's really turned out to be a delightful and interesting and very unique, one-of-a-kind piece. So I do need a couple of jump rings. I'll get some of those ready-made ones. They match the chain really well. And since there's no magnets on this part of the piece, we can use those. That's just a detail, but if you do like to use magnetic clasps, you might want to take a moment to make your own jump rings out of the anti-tarnish wire. Just a detail, but I love magnetic clasps, but it drives me crazy when it's grabbing onto the chain and the other things. The other things in my piece, I meant to say. I have butterfingers this morning. So you guys probably don't realize, but I worked a really long time yesterday on filming and unboxing when I got my dollar bead subscriptions in the mail. And then there's editing and those things to be done. And I was really excited about the beads and jumped right into this project, and I worked really late, and I came to a point where I just couldn't finish it last night. So I'm actually finishing this part the next morning, and it's quite early in the morning as well. So that is the magic of YouTube. But I really do love these subscriptions. This one is wonderful because the fire polish beads and the Czech glass beads that you get, and even the sizes that we get, are just staples to any jewelry maker. And so I love getting them. And when I opened the box and saw the colors for this month, I was really excited. So look at that. That is just stunning. This is definitely going to be a piece that I have to put some pictures at the end of the video. And I'm going to do a try-on video really soon too. So I was going to open the clasp, but this part is super easy. One of the things I love about a magnetic clasp, there's no right or left. Some of you may not know, but instead of pulling it directly apart from each other, the way to open them is to like peel it open, like almost the way if you cracked an egg and you pulled it back like that instead of straight out. And that way you don't put so much stress on your chain and on your jump rings when you're using a magnetic clasp. So this piece is done. I really wish it was really more in the camera, but this piece is just stunning. It is a sort of a bar necklace, a Y necklace, a multi-strand necklace, sort of I mean, I just love it. I think it turned out great. I deviated a little bit from my original design idea, but sometimes those things are just the best. So I thank you so much for watching my video today. If you are not familiar with the beads in the dollar bead box and with their website, and also the dollar bead bag is a separate subscription, I will link those below and have a look at it, because they are one of the better priced subscriptions. Those two are two of the better priced subscriptions that are out there, not very expensive, and you get just fabulous Czech glass fire polished beads and some specialty beads, and then you get access. It's a club, so then you get access to shopping on the website, and all the items are $1. So it's a really great resource, and I will link it below if you're not familiar with it. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, I would greatly appreciate, just take a moment and tap that subscribe button. It helps support my work, and I hope everyone is safe and well and having fun on your beading mats. I will see you in the next video. Ciao, jewelry making friends.